Emergency Services, Mike Ellis, and Minister of Health, Adriana LaGrange, as well as Christie Tucker, Information Unit Manager at Alberta Wildfire, and Stephen Lacroix, Managing Director and Senior Assistant Deputy Minister at the Alberta Emergency Management Agency, to bring a wildfire update. We were relieved to see that wildfire evacuation orders and alerts in Grande Prairie County decreased in scope, but even as that happened, in the regional municipality of Wood Buffalo issued an evacuation order for parts of Fort McMurray in response to a wildfire burning south of the city. As residents rush to leave their homes, I know that this will bring back difficult memories from the devastating fires of 2016. And I'm sure these memories will create fear and uncertainty for many in Fort McMurray, and my sympathy is with everyone facing this situation. But safety must remain our top priority. Our government is constantly monitoring the situation, and our Emergency Management Cabinet Committee met again yesterday evening to be briefed and to plan. It's important that everyone know that we are prepared to do whatever is necessary to keep Albertans safe. This evacuation is a stark reminder that our province lives alongside the threat of wildfires and other national disasters. And let me assure you, our government will have Alberta's back whenever a disaster strikes. To the firefighters braving the flames to defend Fort McMurray and other areas of the province, we appreciate your heroic efforts more than we can say, and we pray for your safe return. And to the residents of Fort McMurray, especially those who've had to evacuate, our government stands with you in your community today and always, and all of Alberta stands with you. Now I'll turn things over to Minister Todd Loewen to provide an update on the current wildfire situation.
Good morning, and thank you for joining me for the wildfire update. I want to start off by thanking Alberta Wildfire team and municipal firefighters. They have been working extremely hard to protect Albertans and their communities, and we want to thank them for all that they're doing. Despite some areas of the province receiving rain in recent days, wildfire activity has been elevated over the past week. The wildfire near Fort McMurray that we've entered in a unified command with the regional municipality of Wood Buffalo Wood. This fire is classified as out of control, burning over 20,000 hectares. The wildfire near Fort McMurray grew significantly on Tuesday, May 14th, bringing it closer to Fort McMurray and surrounding communities. Wildfire behavior was particularly aggressive due to shifting winds, leading to growth in multiple directions and large smoke columns. Alberta Wildfire personnel are actively responding to wildfire, including air and ground suppression efforts and fire guard construction near the northeastern section of the wildfire and along the power line west of town. Heavy equipment operators helped to break up the fuel sources, and we had 3 night vision equipped helicopters as well as air tankers and helicopters dropping water on the active edges of the wildfire. Working with the regional municipality of Wood Buffalo, we are actively setting up structural protection in Fort McMurray, Gregoire subdivision, as well as the Gregoire First Nation and industrial facilities. Wildfire personnel worked through the night and continue working now to create fire guards and slow the spread of the wildfire. Due to substantial growth and heightened activity, an evacuation order was issued for Beacon Hill, Abasand, Prairie Creek, and Grayling Terrace. An evacuation alert remains in effect for Fort McMurray, Sapre Creek, Gregoire Lake Estates, Fort McMurray First Nations, Anzac, and Rickards Landing Industrial Park. We urge Albertans to follow all local evacuation advisories and orders, and we encourage you to regularly check alberta.ca for status on these alerts. As of as of 2 p.m. today, a fire ban will be in effect in the Fort McMurray and high-level forest areas. Under a fire ban, all outdoor wood fires on public and private land are banned. In addition, an off-highway vehicle restriction will be implemented for the Fort McMurray forest area. Under an OHV restriction, the recreational use of OHVs is prohibited. On average, over the past 5 years, less than 1% of wildfires throughout the province have been caused by an off-highway vehicle. This restriction will help us prevent further human-caused wildfires while fire danger remains high and personnel focus on the larger fire near Fort McMurray. A number of fire restrictions and advisories remain throughout the rest of the province. Visit albertafirebans.ca for more information and a map of the restriction boundaries. It's also crucial that Albertans stay up to date on wildfire risk conditions by consulting the wildfire danger page on alberta.ca. Wildfire danger has increased in recent days, with many areas of the province now experiencing high, very high, or extreme wildfire danger. When conditions like this occur, Albertans are encouraged to stay current on active wildfires and other bans, restrictions, and advisories using the Alberta Wildfire and Alberta Fire Ban apps. Our hearts go out to the families impacted by the evacuation order near Fort McMurray, and please know that we are working to ensure that you can return home safely and as soon as possible. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Minister Loewen. So good morning, everyone. Alberta continues to see some substantial wildfire activity in northern parts of the province, and it's undoubtedly a challenging time for those communities affected and their residents, and of course, we are all here for them. I want to start off by saying a big thank you to those on the ground. Thank you to Wildfire, who is doing an amazing job keeping the fires at bay. Thank you to Alberta Emergency Management for their work in working with municipality to get evacuated communities to safety. And thank you to the communities themselves, adhering to local alerts, and of course working with all partners made this difficult situation a little easier for everyone to navigate. Alberta Emergency Management is working closely with all of the impacted communities, and we're committed to providing support and resources as needed to navigate through the situation. There are currently 2 wildfire-related states of local emergency declared. Okay, one for the County of Grande Prairie, and one for the rural municipality of Wood Buffalo. The Fort McMurray First Nation number 468 has also issued a band council resolution. Yesterday afternoon, the regional municipality of Wood Buffalo issued an evacuation order for the communities of Prairie Creek, Beacon Hill, Abasand, and Grayling Terrace. The Alberta Sheriff's Branch have been assisting the RCMP with evacuations in the impacted neighborhoods, and the estimated number of people evacuated is over 6,000. The Alberta Emergency Management Agency regional and First Nations field officers, wildland urban interface field officers, and emergency social service officers have also been working in close collaboration with the municipality's Director of Emergency Management and their team. Additionally, an evacuation alert remains in place for other areas of the municipality, and please note that the alerts are different from evacuation orders. They are advisory in nature and are issued to give people time to prepare for potential evacuation if the situation deteriorates. I encourage all residents to visit rwmb.ca, that's rwmb.ca, and stay connected to the municipality for the most up-to-date information on accommodation, evacuation centres, and muster points. The regional municipality of Wood Buffalo has scheduled a live community update at 11 a.m. this morning and may have some updated information at that time. The County of Grande Prairie's evacuation order has decreased in size, and at this time the estimated number of evacuees is 20. For those under an evacuation order, please register online as an evacuee at emergencyregistration.alberta.ca. Registering as an evacuee will help you access resources and important information like updates and re-entry plans. In addition to the County of Grande Prairie evacuation order, there remains a separate evacuation alert. People in the affected area should still be ready to leave on short notice, and stay tuned to the Grande Prairie Regional Emergency Partnership website for the most up-to-date information on the areas impacted. The Municipal District of Greenview canceled its evacuation order yesterday, but they are still encouraging residents to be prepared to leave again if conditions change, and the municipality's website will continue to have the most up-to-date information. I would also like to remind affected residents wildfire conditions can change and deteriorate rapidly, especially this time of the year. Albertans need to remain vigilant. If you are in the community that's on an evacuation alert, be prepared in case you are asked to evacuate. Take this time to get ready so that you can leave as quickly as possible. Ensure that you have your key belongings, including important travel documents and medication. Pack an emergency kit with enough food and water for a minimum of 72 hours. And make sure that you have a plan for your pets and have some cash on hand to keep your vehicle fueled. Make alternative transportation arrangements if needed. I realize that this is an extremely stressful situation for everyone. Evacuation orders are not made lightly and are in place to protect people. I encourage all Albertans to listen and follow the instructions of local authorities. Our number one priority is, of course, to keep you safe and, of course, all of your loved ones. And with that, I will pass it over to Christie at Wildfire. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. There are currently 45, excuse me, there are currently 45 wildfires burning in the forest protection area of Alberta. Our highest priority right now is the wildfire south of Fort McMurray. I'll provide a bit more information to the update that Minister Loewen has provided. The wildfire is classified as MWF-017. It is out of control and is now nearly 21,000 hectares in size. The wildfire grew significantly to the northeast yesterday, and it was driven by gusty winds. As of this morning, the closest point of the fire is about 5.5 kilometers from the Fort McMurray landfill and 4.5 kilometers from the intersection of Highway 63 and 881. Night vision helicopters worked overnight to drop water on the fire's active edges and were supported by firefighters on the ground looking for hotspots. Less than 1 millimeter of rain fell on the wildfire overnight. Active fire behavior is expected today, but it should be less than what we saw yesterday, thanks to cooler temperature and weaker winds. Winds from the northwest at 10 kilometers an hour are expected today, which should push the fire away from Fort McMurray and Highway 63. A high of 13 degrees is expected, which will lead to cooler weather and slightly less wildfire activity. Firefighters will be back on the line today and will continue to work to stop the spread of the fire. Helicopters and air tankers are going to be dropping water and retardant on the active edges of the fire, and heavy equipment operators are building fire guards to the southwest of Fort McMurray. Firefighters are also working to complete some of the structural protection on buildings in the Prairie Creek and Beacon Hill neighborhoods, and structure protection was installed on the Rickards Landing Industrial Park, Gregoire Lakes Estates, and Gregoire Lake 176. Alberta Wildfire and the regional municipality of Wood Buffalo have entered into unified command, and we are going to be working together to manage this wildfire. Because of conditions in the northern part of the province, as Minister Loewen said at 2 o'clock this afternoon, a fire ban is coming into effect in the High Level and Fort McMurray areas, as well as an off-highway vehicle restriction in the Fort McMurray area. A fire ban will remain in place in the Grand Prairie area. Help us prevent any more wildfires in areas of high hazard. Follow any bans or restrictions in your area and check albertafirebans.ca to learn more. Thank you.
Thanks, Christie. We'll go to questions now. I'll just note we have a couple more people available for questions. In addition to the speakers, we have Stephen Lacroix, the Managing Director of AEMA, and Minister Adriana Lagrange there at the side. So we'll start in the room first, and then we'll go to the phones. Reporters, as usual, will ask you to state your name and outlet. One question, one follow-up. So first question, please.
Perfect. Thank you so much for taking my question. It's Shalane Skolsky with CTV News in Edmonton. Not sure who it's best addressed to, but it's in regards to income replacement. Who is eligible? How and where can it be accessed? And where will that money be taken from? I know there was $2 billion set aside in the Disaster Relief Fund in Budget 2024. Some raised concerns because last year it cost $2.9 billion. So if the amount exceeds that amount, are you willing to pull from elsewhere? If so, where?
We would be pulling it essentially from the Treasury, and we would we're going to leave nobody behind, as the Premier has stated before. We'll do whatever it takes to keep Albertans safe. Regarding the technical aspect of things, if I'm not mistaken, it's $1,250 for an adult, $500 for a child. This will be, I think, 7 days if you are displaced from your residence. But Stephen, if you want to maybe provide some. Oh, sure, go ahead, Premier.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
And so we have, this would be administered through Seniors Community and Social Services very much the same way as last year. If for those individuals who qualify, we'll have a process to register, and then it will be direct deposited into their account. As well, we make cards available for those who don't have access to a bank account or would prefer it to have some other way. But this is the reason why we increased our contingency from last year, $1.5 billion up to $2 billion. You have to recall last year, there's a significant amount of the additional money that was used in contingency for drought relief. It wasn't entirely related to fire. Todd might have more about what the total fire costs were. But at the moment, you have to also, just to put it into context, we had, I believe, 45,000 people who were displaced and required that emergency support last year. And we had an unprecedented fire season with 2.2 million hectares burned, which was, I think, 7 times higher than a normal fire season. So I feel pretty confident where we're at right now that the amount that we've set aside for contingency will be sufficient. But as you've seen, a budget is a living document, and if it turns out that more money is needed, then Treasury Board will vote more money to have it available. You just have to make sure that people are taken care of.
Thanks for that. And as a follow-up, AUP has been raising concerns for weeks that we're not adequately prepared for the wildfire season, arguing we are not fully staffed early enough. I think they said they were expecting fully staffed by today, if I'm not correct. They also said that those fighting the fires are less experienced, and it's due to a retention crisis in Alberta. More experienced firefighters are going to BC, where they're going to make more money, get better benefits. What do you have to say to that criticism, and what are you doing to rectify it, given I imagine we want those firefighters here and more experienced ones?
Yeah, so the recruitment process and retention process has been going good in Alberta. This year we had more the applications coming in to fight wildfire has been greater than in the past. So our recruitment has been going very well. We make sure that our firefighters are well trained. We have the Hinton Training Center that all of our firefighters go through, both the new recruits and last year's and years before. So we make sure that they're trained for the job that they're required to do. Whether it's in a management position or whether it's one of the ones just fighting the fire on the fire line. And so I think some of those accusations are actually incorrect. When we look at the wildfire fighters and having that kind of ability to attract them to fight fires in Alberta, I think our retention and our recruitment has been going very well this year. And of course, because of that, I think we can safely assume that because people do want to take on that job and fight fires and help Albertans keep their communities safe, that and we do have a great team, and I think it's proven by the fires that we've put out already this year. We have well over 300 fires that our teams have extinguished this year. And I think we're in a really good position as far as moving into the season. Being prepared and having the crews doesn't mean we're not going to have wildfires. It doesn't mean we're not going to have evacuations. It doesn't mean we're not going to have some of those natural things that happen every year, anyways. But we're in a better position than we were last year. We hired additional staff and additional firefighters on the ground, and those people are doing the job that Albertans expect.
Thanks, Minister. Next up the mic.
Hi, Morgan Black with Global Edmonton. We saw another busy Highway 63, just like we did in 2016. I'm just wondering what's the latest on adding another major route out of Fort McMurray?
I should also just add on Todd's previous comment as well that I'm grateful that the provinces have also reached out to offer support. Yukon, Saskatchewan, and Newfoundland and Labrador have all said that they would be prepared to help us if we need be. And we do have access to the Canadian Interagency Forest Fire Centre as a mechanism to get more resources if needed. On the issue of an alternative route out of Fort McMurray, we have commenced a process to do consultation on Highway 686, which would link the Peace region to Fort McMurray. Right now, if you want to go between Grand Prairie and Fort McMurray, you have to come down south and then go up. We're working with the First Nations chief up there, who we've asked to lead the effort in assisting us in identifying the route. And I understand that process, it's a new process that we're trying, but it is underway. We don't have the route decided yet. The consultation is underway, but we're in the planning stages for it.
And then as follow-up, 2016 obviously was a very historic event as well. Recommendations came out of it. I think communication was like a big one from the municipality. What recommendations from 2016 has the government implemented to make things hopefully go smoother this time around?
Well, I'm sure that Todd can add to this as well, but I can tell you from my perspective, having gone through the High River floods the first time I was in office, and then watching, having visited Slave Lake as well as covering when I was in radio the evacuation from Fort McMurray and interviewing people afterwards. I knew that we had to have a dedicated public safety ministry, so we created the Ministry of Public Safety and Emergency Services so that we could have Minister Ellis be the direct point of contact on that before it was embedded in municipal affairs. Municipal affairs has an important role to do, but I thought that this was important that we had a dedicated service for it. In addition, part of the changes that we're making in Bill 21 is responding to giving some clarity about what happens when you have a fire that goes across multiple jurisdictions. In this particular case, because it's staying within the jurisdiction of the regional municipality of Wood Buffalo, the local fire agency is taking the lead, but we now have moved very quickly to integrated command, and I think that was probably an important lesson learned from 2016, is to do that faster if need be, so that you don't have to wait until there's a handoff or until the fire breaches the borders of a city. That was one of the important learnings that we had, is to make sure that we're more proactive from an emergency management agency point of view. And we are, should Bill 21 pass, that's the intention, is that when we see fires or flood or any incident that affects multiple jurisdictions, we believe that requires a provincial role and provincial coordination. And even on this one, there's, I believe, 5 municipalities that are receiving evacuees. And it is our job as a province to make sure that Lac La Biche is prepared, Bonnyville's prepared, Cold Lake's prepared, Edmonton is prepared, and to do that kind of integration. So I would say that those are the communications aspects of that have been front of mind in all of these reforms. We also have the Alberta Emergency Management Agency app, and if people want to download that, I've downloaded it for this hazard season as well. It gives you can choose all of Alberta, and you can get regular updates on what is happening, so that you can see as things escalate through the different phases, be able to get those immediate updates. Maybe I'll see if either Todd or Mike wants to comment on anything that I may have missed. But so much of the planning around this fire season took place as well because of the learning that we had last year. And I've mentioned this before, but Minister Loewen has added a bunch of new technology and new techniques that we can now deploy through the rest of the province. Not every municipality has the ability to have helicopters, let alone night vision helicopters. And we are, I think, the only jurisdiction that has that. And as you've seen as well, he's shifted the firefighting as well, so we can do it throughout the evening, so that we're working with the weather when the weather cools down. That also, I think, assists us in being able to make some progress when we're over the evenings. But Todd, maybe you want to add a little bit more to that?
Yeah, so no, when it comes to the ability to fight fire at night, that's been, I think, a real game changer in Alberta, and we are the only jurisdiction in Canada that has night vision helicopters. We have 3. All 3 were working last night on the fire in Fort Mac, so that was great to see. When it comes to communications, I guess just an example, the recent fire and the fire that's still continuing on in the Grand Prairie area. It started in the county of Grand Prairie. It went across the river into the forest protection area, then into the MD of Greenview. So when that happened, we went to a unified command with Alberta Wildfire, the county of Grand Prairie, the MD of Greenview. So I think that kind of communication has improved, that we're able to work together to fight these big wildfires. And I'll just turn it over to Christie for a little more information on the communication.
Thank you, Minister. I can just point to some of the changes from 2016. There was a review done, independent review at the time, and Alberta Wildfire did accept all of the recommendations in that review. And one of the simplest things I can point to is what we've changed since 2016 is bringing in fire season a month early. We have the earliest legal start to fire season here in Alberta, and this year it was even earlier because of the conditions we were seeing. But no other jurisdiction in Canada starts their fire season on March 1st, and that's one of the changes that we brought in from the 2016 wildfire in the Fort McMurray area. On the issue of communication, as identified already, we're in unified command right now with the RMWB. And what our teams have been doing out there all across the province is not just this year, but all year round, and in previous years, we do significant amount of work with the municipalities, including cross-training, including exercises on the ground, and I've been at one in Fort McMurray myself. That involves the municipality, local emergency services, and so everyone is working together throughout the year, not just when we need them in wildfire season, to improve that communication, to understand better how we work and how we can work well together. And when you're in unified command, you're sitting there side by side. So the communication is really excellent in those circumstances, and we have learned a lot, I think, over the years, and improve as much as we can with our learnings from year on year. And it's a matter of sort of communication, not just in how we talk to the other emergency services during an emergency, but something as simple as using the same radio language. those are all things that we have improved and changed since 2016 and improving all the time.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Christie. We'll go to the next question at the mic, but just one note before that. I'll just repeat the website for information from the municipality of Fort McMurray. It's www.rmwb.ca. So just want to make sure that's clear. And now, thanks. Next question at the mic.
Thank you, Marc-Antoine Leblanc, Radio-Canada. My question is for the evacuees of 7 days and more, they can receive $1,250. So I just wonder, can they receive it immediately and then the province check it up, or they have to wait?
Yeah, they have to wait the 7 days.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I guess my next question is for Christie Tucker. With the change of wind for the rest of Fort McMurray, I just want to confirm, are they safe where they are at the moment?
With the winds that we're anticipating today, we are expecting the fire to move away from the community and away from the highway. These are really favorable winds for us. We're seeing lower winds, and firefighters, of course, winds can change, but that's what's being anticipated for today. Firefighters are going to be working very hard, as well as the aircraft and heavy equipment operators, to make significant progress while we have that reprieve from the fire activity.
I think the only thing I would add, I just want to reinforce what Christie said. These are very, very fluid situations. As Christie indicated, the winds can change at any moment. And that's why in my remarks, anybody who is in one of those potential evacuee zones, they have to be prepared. And that's why we've listed what you need to be prepared for.
I should mention part of the discussion that we've had around the emergency payment is there's an expectation, and we do mention this in all of our emergency preparation, is to be prepared to cover your expenses and your family's expenses for 72 hours. But in addition to that, we provide a lot of resources in those immediate days following an evacuation. We provide hotel vouchers, food, and all of the additional communication support. It's when an evacuation lingers longer than a week that it can become a financial hardship. And many families, not all, but many families also have access to the emergency payments that they can get through their own insurance. So that was part of the consideration, is that there's a lot of resources that we put into supporting people in those immediate few days. And it's after 7 days that it can become a bit of a hardship, which is why we want to make sure people have the dollars that they need to see them through some of those additional expenses.
Thanks, Premier. Looks like no follow-up, so we'll go next at the mic.
Michelle Belfontaine, CBC. As you noted earlier, I mean, there's quite a few people that are being evacuated now that were evacuated back in 2016. And so my colleagues that are up north say that they're talking to people who are feeling very traumatized by this, by having to do it a second time. So I'm wondering, what kind of mental health supports will be available perhaps at evacuation centers or on site for people?
I might get Minister LaGrange to comment on this one as well.
So you're right. It is taking a toll mentally, obviously, for individuals who've been through that process before. Alberta Health Services does have a lot of wildfire resources available online, as well as there's direct links to be able to speak to individuals. So we would really encourage everyone to contact the emergency link, which is available through 811. There's also a toll-free Indigenous support line as well. But the other areas that they can look at include air quality and emergency planning links. And so those are all things that are available and will continue to be made available for those individuals.
Is there any consideration to actually get counselors and people on site at evacuation centers? Because as you appreciate, not everybody has access to a phone or
right, and I understand that those that are available already on site will continue on. Currently, the hospital is still open, as well as other facilities within the municipality of Wood Buffalo. So those areas do remain open at this point in time.
Thanks, Minister. Next at the mic.
Sorry.
Beg pardon.
Yeah, we had last year, obviously mental health concerns for last year's fire season was also top of mind for Albertans, and so we made sure we had the necessary reports, and we'll be doing the same thing this year. Always as a default, let's never forget that we always have 211 available as a default.
Thanks, Minister.
Okay, Catherine Gurkowski, Alberta Today. So the regional municipality of Wood Buffalo had mentioned they're at limited capacity to register new vulnerable people. I'm wondering what's the process if someone is unable to get out of town on their own?
I might get Steve to supplement that, but I will say that nobody's going to be left behind. So we have made, I'll ask maybe again Steve to supplement this. Well, Alberta Emergency Management, of course, is working with the local municipality. Certainly, if there's somebody that is unable, maybe doesn't own a vehicle or for whatever reason doesn't have the ability to drive out, then we will be working with the municipality to make sure that person gets out and is evacuated. Again, nobody is going to be left behind. Steve, is there anything to add on that? Maybe.
Not much to add, Minister. What I would say is that we do have a list of those vulnerable people and proactively reached out to them to make sure that arrangements have been made. So those plans are in place right now. Thank you.
And I was hoping to get some further clarification on the Highway 686. So how long is that consultation period going to last, and is there dedicated capital funding for that project?
Well, go ahead.
No, just, this is not a solution for this fire season for sure, and it is, we want to be respectful of the Indigenous consultation process that they're leading, so we don't have a time frame on that yet, but it is a priority for us as a major economic corridor. I believe Minister Nixon might be able to follow up with you from Seniors Community and Social Services. At our update, I believe he said that there were 12 individuals that are under his care that needed to find placement, and so he can maybe give you some more details on that. Minister LaGrange mentioned yesterday there were 21 very high needs individuals in various facilities that needed to be moved, and the process there is to make sure that the families are involved in all of that so that they know where they have arrived and where they'll be settled until they are able to safely return home. And I believe there's 5 buses on standby in the event that there needs to be a larger evacuation of some of the vulnerable patients there as well.
Jonathan Bradley, Western Standard. I'm not too sure who would be best to answer this question. So there's currently 4 communities in Fort McMurray under an evacuation order. What is the status of possibly extending the evacuation order to more communities or maybe even the municipality itself?
Would that be yours?
Well, thank you very much for the question. Maybe Todd can supplement here, but really that's honestly a decision that's going to be made by that unified command, and it's going to be really dependent on the fire and winds and the conditions on which way that critical incident is going to take it. So if it takes it to a point that the incident command and the unified command team makes the decision to evacuate the rest of the city, then that will be a decision that will be made by unified command. But I don't know if there's anything further to add, if you want.
Yeah, and as the Minister Ellis said, it'll depend on the conditions. What wildfire does is they analyze the conditions. They look at how the winds may change and then during the next 24 or 36 hours, and then they make recommendations. And so wildfire doesn't call for the evacuation orders or advisories, but we provide the information to the people that do make the decision, usually on the municipal level, that make those decisions on whether the evacuation should take place or not.
Okay.
Thanks, Minister. Jonathan, we'll take a supplementary, but then we've got people waiting patiently on the phone, so we'll go to the phone after your supplementary.
Okay. So you mentioned that obviously people are being evacuated right now, but at the moment it's uncertain when people will return home. Do you have any idea? What do you put the probability of people being able to return home within, say, the next week or so?
Again, we'll be providing the information to the municipality on the likelihood of the fire, approaching the community closer, and that again for us it totally depends on the fire's reaction to our fire suppression efforts and also the weather conditions. So it'd be hard at this point to try to draw any conclusions on what the next few days might bring, but again we provide that information as it happens to the people that make the decisions on the evacuation, which again is using municipality.
Thank you.
Thanks, Minister. We'll switch to the phone now. So, operator, put through the first caller.
Thank you. Vince McDermott, Fort Mac today. Hi, folks. This first question would probably be for the Premier. On the topic of routes out of Fort McMurray,
has any thought been given to fully twinning Highway 63 all the way to Edmonton? I ask this because that was actually a motion that was supposed to be debated at the RMW's council meeting last night before it was canceled.
Well, look, I know that both Minister Brian Jean as well as MLA Tani Yao have returned home because they want to make sure that they're having a gauge on how people are feeling and are able to give us some feedback. So I can tell you they are very staunch advocates for making sure that we've got resources where they're needed in Fort McMurray and area. There hasn't been a decision made on that, but I have no doubt that there'll be a discussion about that. I mean, when we have the establishment of transportation and economic corridors, we have to make sure that our economic corridors are well resourced, and so no doubt there'll be a conversation about that, as well as accelerating on 686 once we get through this fire season again.
Thanks, Premier. Supplementary, Vince?
Thank you. Thank you. Also, I know the RMWB says they are still owed DRP funding from last year's Fort Chippewa wildfire and the April 2020 flood. So, on the topic of the disaster recovery program, what is in place on the province's end just to make sure that that kind of financial support and reimbursement for local governments actually reaches local governments in a faster manner than it has been in the past?
Sure. I mean, we do coordinate with the federal government on that, and we get a reimbursement from the federal government. And it's true there can sometimes be delays, but I'll see if Stephen Lacroix can give you some more details on that.
Thanks, Premier. Yeah, there's a well-established process, and unfortunately, the bureaucracy takes a bit of time. What I can tell you, though, is once we have justification by the local authorities as to the amounts involved in those events, the provincial government is swiftly advancing up to 50% of that amount. And then we require the final justification, so the receipts essentially, for those expenses to push the rest of the money to the local authorities. And we will not wait until we get the reimbursement from the federal government, which can take years, actually, depending on the scale of the event. And I'm not necessarily attacking them. It's just a lot of audits to get to the actual number. But yeah, so 50% as soon as we get a good indication as what the costs are. The other 50% the minute we've got the receipts. We don't want to be in a position or put the municipalities in a position where we would have to claw back if the estimates are wrong. That's some of the story behind that process. Thank you.
Thanks, Stephen. We'll go to the next caller.
Thank you, Don Bray, Calgary Herald.
Premier, could I ask a bit about Bill 21 now? It sounds to me like you're able to exercise a lot of the powers that would be provided, or at least clarified in Bill 21 already. Is the fact of integrated command in Fort Mac a consequence of people expecting the bill, or is it something that could have happened last year without the bill? There has been some criticism of the bill, as I'm sure you know, a kind of surprising criticism actually in this case. So could you explain that?
Sure, Don. Thank you for listening. To be honest with you, there's no additional powers. As we have all stated before here, we do have the ability right now, although it's quite clunky, to take over a critical incident. What Bill 21 does have is a reporting structure. It's no different than any other form of critical incident command. The reporting structure would be in the form of a briefing note, where we start at a level 1 and may move up to a level 4. And right now we're in a unified command. That is something that has been done through verbal communications between Alberta Emergency Management as well as the local municipality. But again, this is some of the feedback that we were getting during last year's fire system, was to provide clarity and transparency in the legislation so that when we start from a level 1 and we have to go up to a level 4, it's clearly outlined. Thank you. Yeah.
One of the things that Minister Loewen discovered when he was looking at his authorities, because our forest firefighting team is under his portfolio, and they have a lot of latitude to be proactive in the forest areas, but not so much in southern Alberta, which is where we do also still have a lot of public land, which is the grazing lease land. And strangely, the way the legislation was written is that we would have had to demonstrate incompetence on the part of a local authority before we would be able to step in and provide that unified command. And so what we've essentially proposed doing in Bill 21 is having the same kind of unified command structure that we have seen work so well in the forested areas and the municipalities associated with that in all of the areas of Alberta, so that we're not having two different approaches depending on where a fire arises. I mean, there's lots of fires that generate throughout the mountain parks in southern Alberta. We saw, of course, Waterton Fire from a few years ago, and just sitting back and waiting until it gets out of control seems to be a bit reactive, especially since these fires can move very quickly. So we thought that because we have such a good response and we have so much expertise and talent and equipment with the forest fire management, that we should make sure that that applies to all of the areas that cover public lands. Did you want to add, Minister Loewen?
Yeah, so basically it's just clarifying what processes that are already in place, and like the Premier said, it's you know, in order to have been involved, we would have had to prove you know, negligence or incompetence, and that isn't what this is all about. This is about making sure that we can take the opportunity to help out municipalities. I look back to the Grand Prairie fire that was in the Grand Prairie County last year, and being in that room where there was unified command with the county, with the city of Grand Prairie, and with Alberta Wildfire. I believe at one time when I was in there was over 50 people in that room. Both, you know, we had the municipality, the county of Grand Prairie, the city of Grand Prairie, Alberta Wildfire. We had Alberta Health. We had all the emergency services all were in the room together, and so they could easily communicate back and forth. And that's what unified command is all about, is being able to have that open communication back and forth. But with Bill 21, we'll be able to, it'll be clearly stated, so municipalities and Alberta Wildfire will know the process and what will trigger different levels of command structure as we move through a wildfire situation.
Thanks, Minister. Don, we'll take a supplementary if you have one, and then we're running long, so we'll take one more after you, Don. So go ahead.
Then, just clarification, you're convinced in this situation that you can do everything you need to without Bill 21 actually being law. And I presume when you say incompetent, you mean overwhelmed or unable, rather than having to prove they just are no good at the job. Incompetent seems like an odd word.
Yeah, so you're right, Don, when it comes to a possible municipality that could potentially be overwhelmed. You know, Alberta Emergency Management makes sure that local municipalities, of course, have the proper education and training to deal with a local emergency. But as the Premier noted, if you do have a critical incident that goes cross-jurisdictional, as an example, the expectation would not be for a local municipality to deal with, even if it started in their particular area, to deal with something that is cross-jurisdictional. So all Bill 21 is a reporting structure. That all it does is it provides clarity, transparency, and consistency throughout the province, so that when the initial incident occurs, which might be in a local regional municipality as an example, and as it escalates and it potentially goes beyond the capabilities of a local municipality to deal with, in other words, it goes cross-jurisdictionally or becomes too big because they don't have the necessary resources to deal with that critical incident, then the expectation, I think, is we can all agree that the province would come in and assume control, but that is in one of those extreme scenarios. What is working well in this particular situation that we're dealing with the rural municipality of Wood Buffalo is that we have the unified command. And so that unified command is working well, but if the potential fire was to go beyond that, and it becomes beyond the capability and control of the local municipality in that unified command, then yes, the province is prepared with all their experts, with all the people that have the background in this to take command and control over that critical incident.
Thanks, Minister. Okay, if we're done with that, we'll take one last question. Operator, do we have one more caller?
Thank you. Yes, Rick Bell, Post Media.
This is a question for Premier Smith. If I may use the last question to ask something that is off topic. In Calgary, we've just concluded the biggest public hearing in Calgary history. 15 days, the strongest opposition any councillor has ever seen at City Hall, and still the mayor and the council majority pushed through a very strong citywide rezoning plan, and everybody who we expected to vote yes voted yes. There was no allowance for a plebiscite, and I'm just wondering, you've spoken on this issue in the past. I just want to know what your thoughts are now that, against the will of many, many, many Calgarians, a major change is being made to how the city develops.
Well, you know, I've been watching this because it was a process that was started under the prior mayor and became pretty controversial. And I believe it was called the Community Guide or something at the time, and became something that I believe that residents of Calgary weighed in on in the last election. What had me concerned is that it seemed like the resurgence of this was tied to a bilateral deal that the city of Calgary signed with the federal government. Of course, it's emerged, it's a little bit murky. Seems like the federal government said, yes, they need to make these changes, and then it sounded like the municipality said, no, we've got the authority to, and there's no tie to the money. I don't know what the real answer is there, but it does concern me if municipalities feel that they have pressure from the federal government to change their policies in order to get a couple $100 million. That's part of the reason why we've brought in Bill 18, because we want to be able to be the advocate for all of our municipalities so that they don't feel like they have to be pressured into passing policies that will likely get some of them unelected in the next election, and will allow for us to be able to be that shield. So not only can we negotiate with the federal government, something that is fair, but also so that we can make sure that all of those dollars are going to each municipality. So I don't quite know how this is going to turn out for the various members who voted the way they did. I've seen the polling on some of those ridings, just like anyone else has. But it does seem to me that is, there's an election about a year and a half away. So I guess we'll see whether or not there's widespread acceptance then.
Rick, follow up?
Well, it sounds like you believe, as some councillors do, that there was a role for the federal government. It seemed to be that case in the way things were communicated by the federal government. How strongly are you concerned that there could have been meddling from Ottawa to make this happen? That this was a very strong incentive, or a great fear if it didn't turn out and there was a no vote. How upset are you by that? I mean, the new law will do what the new law does, but it doesn't help people in Calgary today. Mm-hmm. So what is your feeling about that, about the federal government? I'm
so concerned about it that we're putting forward legislation very similar to what Quebec has put through, which would obligate the federal government to work with us when they're looking at funding various joint initiatives, because we believe that we would then have the clout at the bargaining table to be able to say certain things are on and certain things are off. And so I think any of these negotiations are important for the federal government to meet its targets, but also for the provincial government to be able to meet its targets and take care of all of our municipalities. So if it is the case that the council members felt that somehow that money would be at risk if they didn't make the kind of changes that they did, then that's very concerning, because the federal government should not dictate what municipal policy should be. The municipalities under our Constitution remain the sole authority of the provincial government. We're the ones who pass the Municipal Government Act and give them the authorities that they do have. So yeah, I would say I am concerned if that's the case, but I guess we'll see what happens in the next election about how comfortable Calgarians are with the decisions that were made.
Thanks, Premier. We'll wrap there.
Okay.
Thanks very much
Thanks,
to you and all our speakers. Thanks, reporters. As always, if you need to follow up, you can follow up with me, Sam, any of the appropriate ministries. Just let us know if we missed you and you need anything else. Thanks.